No one knows exactly how many abandoned wells exist in Oklahoma. Some say 16,000, some say thousands more. What is certain, it's a big and dangerous problem. A nonprofit company in Edmond is committed to helping bring that number down to a manageable size. Steve Shaw joins us now to explain how. Steve.
Rich, the experts agree. Abandoned wells around the state are potentially dangerous and an environmental hazard. The problem is safely plugging and removing them is expensive. Wednesday afternoon, 3 miles northwest of the town of Piedmont in Canadian County. Oklahoma City-based Red Dirt Energy was hard at it, plugging an abandoned well. They tell me it takes 3 to 5 days to do it, depending on the weather.
This is how many plugged wells we've got so far. This is as of, I believe, the end of the fiscal year, which was June 30th.
Matt Skinner is spokesman for the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. They regulate the oil and gas industry, which is massive in Oklahoma. He says there are as many as 18,000 unplugged oil and gas wells in the Sooner State. Many are a century old, give or take, but that number could be higher because they just don't know. He says it's a conundrum that was more than a century in the making and a problem that will cost easily more than $200 million to fix.
And back in the day, they didn't know any better. So if the well didn't produce, and it's not just producing wells, if you had a dry hole, that's got to be plugged because that can still serve as a conduit for pollution. If there's a gas pocket down there, methane's coming out, so on and so forth. So it's really an old issue. And they did use, if they did bother to try to plug a well, they used whatever was handy. And we have found logs, articles of clothing, the list goes on.
2 years ago, when President Biden signed the federal infrastructure bill, $3.7 billion was directed towards plugging and, in some cases, restoring errant oil and gas wells nationwide. The Oklahoma Corporation Commission got a $25 million chunk for this year. That money just officially started flowing 2 months ago. Since the state of Oklahoma knew this cash was coming, Skinner says it allowed the Corporation Commission to plug more than 350 wells with state money that is normally set aside by oil and gas operators each year. Skinner says before the federal windfall, there was never enough of that state money to really make much of a dent because of the massive costs involved.
And so we always had to have a fairly decent chunk of change in our account to make sure we had the money to plug for that, because they can be $1 million, and you have to do it.
Skinner says companies like Red Dirt Energy out of Oklahoma City are being paid using that federal money. Since May, crews hired by the Corporation Commission have plugged more than 40 wells around the state. Skinner says that number will continue to climb because the state hopes to get $51 million in federal funds next year. And Skinner says there's a will to go much bigger.
And of course, we're limited by the number of pluggers. Now, we certainly have more pluggers coming forward now and getting registered in the program than we've ever had in a long time, and we're soliciting for more. So if there are experienced pluggers that want to get into this program, we're more than happy to talk to them.
Which is where Derek Williamson and a company called Environmental Innovators of America comes in. We met him Monday in northeast Oklahoma County next to what he says is a well that's been inactive at least for 4 decades. He says many of these things are safety hazards. You know, could you imagine a little kid walking up that ladder and then jumping into that tank?
I think we all know what we did as kids. Some of it will remain unmentioned.
Williamson says his company is a nonprofit that formed 2 years ago. They employ military veterans, and they're raising funds to plug 6 wells on their own near Oklahoma City right now. Parker Bowles is vice president of Environmental Innovators. He says their goal is simply to augment state and federal efforts.
And the way we're trying to set that up is that since we're a nonprofit organization, and we've already talked to industry, and we have industry partners that have wells that they've said they're willing to donate to us, they would donate their wells to us much like a person would donate a car to Salvation Army. Since we're a 501c3, they have a tax write-off as soon as they donate that well to us. So that's their financial incentive.
Skinner says it's a monumental task.
To whatever their reason for doing the plugging, profit or nonprofit, that makes no difference to us. They all have to meet the same requirements.
Brent Rooney is a Marine veteran who's been in the oil and gas industry for many years. He also works for Environmental Innovators of America.
There's integrity and trust that's also, very important in this line of work.
There's a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can literally drive out and find abandoned wells, without even having to look at a list or anything like that. You can literally drive out in rural Oklahoma and find these abandoned wells.
It's kind of sad, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Matt Skinner says there's a lot of information on the Corporation Commission's website for plugging companies who are interested in partnering with the state.